Hello, boys and girls. Greg from the Scary Spirits podcast here to once again make you another cocktail. This week's cocktail is called the Fountain of Youth. And, of course, it is the featured cocktail in today's episode. I'm going to start with our mixing cup. To that, we're going to add vodka. 2.5 ounces. Next, simple syrup. 1/4 ounce. 1/4 ounce. Next, we're going to add 2 sprigs of mint and 3 slices of cucumber. We're going to muddle all that up. The mint and the cucumber. Next, we add ice. And we stir to chill. Take our martini glass. We strain it in there. Not bad. And we float a cucumber slice on top. And there you have it, boys and girls, the Fountain of Youth. Wish me luck. It's alright. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Do I look younger? I feel younger. See ya.
We all do it to some extent. We chase our youth. Maybe it's drinking that healthy elixir now and again, or perhaps applying an anti-aging night cream every night. But no matter what your efforts are, trust me when I tell you, you won't top Dr. Bonet in this week's episode of the Scary Spirits podcast, The Man Who Could Cheat Death. To say he goes to the extreme is an understatement, to be sure. But another question emerges while you watch the good doctor justify his exclusive hold on eternal youth. Should he share his knowledge with the rest of us? Would you? Remember, sharing is caring. Cheers!
Welcome to the Scary Spirits podcast. Please be advised that the presenters may use adult language and/or discuss adult situations. This podcast is not intended for younger listeners or those that may be easily offended. So, if you're ready, let's go.
Hi, I'm Greg,
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen.
and welcome to the Scary Spirits Podcast, the podcast that combines the two very different but highly compatible worlds of scary films and alcoholic spirits.
What could possibly go wrong?
Indeed. How are you, Karen?
I'm fabulous. How are you, Greg?
I'm good.
Oh, good. Any particular reason, or it's a
'Cause
Hammer film and you're all over it?
I'm almost to the point where I can pull my car into the garage now.
Ooh. Lots of people are impressed by
Halloween is
that.
almost gone. It's almost gone. Like a month later after Halloween, I'm finally getting all my shit out of the garage.
I will tell you, I went to Greg's house the other day for game night, and a couple of his skeletons were in some compromising positions. I almost took a picture. I didn't say anything.
Not by design. That's just how I stacked them in there.
I'm like, that's too immature, but it is funny.
So I didn't even notice. So I must be much more mature now, Karen.
That must be it. I'm sure that's it.
I believe this film was my choice. Was it not, Karen?
It was.
The film I have chosen is a Hammer film, Karen.
Back to the Hammers.
Yes. We're getting there. It's called The Man Who Could Cheat Death from 1959.
Is there a reason you chose this?
Karen, this film was released on November 30th, 1959. And this episode will come out, if you're listening on the day it comes out, it is November 29th, Karen.
Oh, nice.
So we're celebrating the 64th anniversary of its release. I have a cocktail as well, Karen, if you're interested.
I am interested.
I'm sure you are in this one, especially, Karen.
Why would you say that, Greg?
Well, Karen, it's called the Fountain of Youth. And knowing how much older you are than me, I'm sure
True.
This is something you would be interested in.
That's a nice way to start the podcast, Greg.
Isn't it, though? Would you like to know how to make it, Karen?
Absolutely.
I'm sure you would. So we're going to need 2.5 ounces of vodka, a 1/4 ounce simple syrup, 2 sprigs of mint, and 4 slices of cucumber. We're going to combine the vodka, simple syrup in a mixing glass, along with the sprigs of mint and 3 of the slices of cucumber.
You know you have to activate the mint, right? Did you smash them on the counter to help them release the oil?
Absolutely, Karen.
You got to smack the mint.
So then we're going to muddle the mint and the 3 slices of cucumber. We're going to add ice and stir to chill. Then we're going to strain into a martini glass and float the last cucumber slice on top of the drink as a garnish. I did all that, but then I very quickly threw the garnish away.
It's like healthy. It's like a smoothie.
Yours is much greener than mine.
I'm muddled.
Think.
I'm muddled like a
I'm muddled too.
Man. I left the skin on mine. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't know there was any other way to do it.
It's very cucumber. I like it. It
is very cucumber.
I'm surprised you're drinking it.
I may have added other things later.
I added more simple syrup.
I may have added some lime juice to mine.
Oh.
From the plastic lime.
It's definitely
trying to make it fruitier.
It's like cucumber water.
It definitely is, yeah.
You know, it's little dangerous.
It burns, Karen. It burns your lips.
It burns a little, yeah.
You do get the mint though, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Should we give our friends and listeners time to make their own fountain of youth, Karen? Do I look younger?
You always look younger than me.
Yes. Go make your own. Hold on. And we're back.
Yes, we are. So before we go any further, how many Hammer films are on your list?
I'm glad you asked, Karen, because I just tallied all that up.
Oh, did you?
So there are 60 on my list.
Oh my God. How many have we seen?
What do you think?
15.
Ooh, it's pretty close, Karen. 14. This is our 14th one.
This is the 14th.
We're about through 1/4 of them.
Okay. Because you haven't picked one in a while. It's been a little while.
It feels like we've done a lot, though, but only 14.
But that's a high percentage in the total number we've done.
Of the 135 or whatever it is episodes.
Yeah, it's like
136.
10% Hammer films.
All right. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, so we've done about a quarter. And I do have one planned for December as well, which is a very like a newer one. Like it's the newest one on my list actually, but I think they may have had a newer one. Oh shit, they just came out with a new one, which I don't know I want to see. But so there's 61 now.
Okay.
So yeah, we're
we all have to have goals.
And then after I'm done with the Hammer films, I'm going to start doing Christopher Lee, the ones that aren't Hammer films, because he's been quite a few that aren't Hammer films as well. So that'll be my next list. Or maybe I'll knock some of those off while we're going. Who knows? But anyway, might you have a brief synopsis of this film for us, Karen?
I do.
Go on. Tell us all the story.
A man experimenting with immortality must commit murder and remove his victim's thyroid glands to implant in himself every 10 years to keep from reverting to his true age and dying a horrible death.
It's mostly accurate, I guess.
But are we a match?
We are a match. So if you're playing bingo, you get a square, probably.
If that's on your bingo card. But before we even go any further, I'm going to tell you where your thyroid gland is. Because it's right there.
Hang on. In the movie, they call it the parathyroid gland. Karen, is that the same thing as a thyroid?
No, but it's in the same place.
But it's different. So you have two glands in the same place. One's a thyroid and one's a parathyroid.
They're smaller and they're within the thyroid glands, just behind them.
The parathyroid is.
Yes, there's usually 4 of them, I think.
Which is what they use in this film. It's not the thyroid, it's the parathyroid.
Well, yeah, but you still need to know where the thyroid is because the parathyroid is right behind the thyroid.
Yes, of course.
So if I just said the parathyroids are right behind the thyroid, you'd say, well, where's the thyroid? And we'd go back to it.
So boys and girls, if you want to conduct this experiment on yourself and see if you can live forever by taking the parathyroid gland out of other people, Karen, tell us where it is.
Your thyroid gland is located in the front of your neck, straddling your windpipe.
Well, Karen, that's not where he was.
I know. That was
him at all.
That was hilarious. It's shaped like a butterfly, smaller in the middle, with 2 wide wings that extend around the sides of your throat. The parathyroid. I'm
not sure Christopher Lee is a surgeon at all.
It didn't seem real, did it? The parathyroid glands lie just behind the thyroid glands in the neck. The parathyroid glands, they're light pink and produce parathyroid hormone, which increases levels of calcium in the blood. The parathyroid glands are small pea-sized glands located in the neck just behind the butterfly-shaped thyroid gland. There are normally 4 individual parathyroids. Sometimes there are more.
So he could have got 4 of these from each victim, is what you're telling me.
Well, I think he needs all of them. So there are 2 above and 2 below. You know, like where the butterfly wings are.
Yes. So maybe the secret is calcium, Karen. Maybe you need lots of calcium in your blood to live forever.
Well, you need it when you're an old lady so you don't break your bones.
Or an old man, for that matter. They tell me. Did you watch this film on Amazon Prime, Karen?
I did, and I saved a penny for some reason.
I know that everything's on sale now.
But a penny. It went from $3.99 to $3.98. I'm like, ooh, thanks.
Oh, was it? I think mine was a bigger discount than that.
I might have run out of whatever they said they used.
Okay. So tell us everything you enjoyed or anything you were pleasantly surprised by in this film from 1959.
Well, it's a Hammer film, so the sets are good. There's not a lot of them, but they're good. The costumes are good. I thought the acting was good. The story was interesting. It was kind of a mix of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and the picture of Dorian Gray. So, it wasn't...
I've not seen that, so I don't know.
Well, it's a book.
I'm sure it's a movie as well.
I'm sure it's a movie too, but so it's basically Dorian Gray stays young and has vigor. It's a very decadent book, apparently. I've not read it, but he leaves.
Is that like what you need total T for vigor?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, is
Don't you
that
see the commercials on TV all the damn time, Karen?
He leads a life of crime and gross sensuality, it says. His body retains perfect youth and vigor, while his recently painted portrait grows day by day into a hideous record of evil. So the portrait that he has painted gets older, but he doesn't. He basically sells his soul to the devil. So he stays young forever, as long as he hides the painting.
Oh, he has to hide the painting?
Yeah, I think at some point, well, I don't know. I haven't read it or seen it, but I know
all you have to do is keep the painting hidden.
The cultural reference is you look like if someone looks very young for their age, what are you, Dorian Gray? It's a literary reference, but it's commonly used.
Yeah, but that's all he has to do is keep it hidden?
I guess.
Huh,
he sold his soul. I mean, there's that.
That's all he has to do. He doesn't have to kill anybody or take their thyroid gland or nothing.
No, but selling your soul back in the day, Greg, meant something to people.
Not if you live forever, Karen. All you got to do is keep that painting under your bed.
I think it was in the attic, if I remember.
Well,
anyway,
you got to hide it.
It's a mix of that.
Put it between your mattress and your box springs. No one's going to find it there.
It's a painting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that would be uncomfortable. Anyway.
Oh, you're like the princess in the pea, are you?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So that part was interesting, the combination of the two stories. It was nice to see Christopher Lee in a serious part. I thought
kind of a hero role.
A little bit, yeah. And the reasonable guy, that was nice to see. I mean, it's a good movie. It's a little slow burn, I think. There's not a lot of gore or a lot of killing or anything like that. It's more
we don't see anything. There are killings, but it's all off screen.
One every 10 years. It's not like a constant barrage of horror. It's more a thinking about
it's more than just that. It's more than every 10 years because you can only keep that thing viable for 4 weeks and the dude's like late. So he's had to.
But they made it sound like those were from corpses, didn't they? And then
I don't know.
It was confusing a little bit in there about where they were getting stuff, but we know he's killing people. But it's a social commentary, I think, a morality tale, and not so much about horror in itself, except horror in that realm.
I agree. I'm not sure. It's more of a drama, I think, than a horror.
But it has horror aspects.
Or maybe a thriller. I don't know. But yeah, there are horrific things in it.
Yeah. So
I agree. The sets are great. Costume is great. The acting is great. It was filmed beautifully, I thought. I really liked it. This might be one of my favorite Hammer films, Karen. Actually.
Well, compared to the movies we've seen lately, it is going to stand out as well done.
It is well done. Even the makeup, there's not a lot of it, but
there are the people in it that are supposed to be beautiful
are good actors. And they're all good actors.
But they're beautiful. I just wrote at some point in my notes, I'm like, all these people are beautiful in this film. And they are good actors. But one of the leads looks a little bit like a young Paul Newman, striking blue eyes. And, and Christopher Lee, you can see his height. He's heads above everyone. And
he's very debonair.
Himself. Yes. He carries himself very well. The woman is gorgeous. That is kind of the love interest. I mean, all the people are pretty.
They are.
Did you like
the inspector?
Well, but he's not supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like that's.
Well, he's, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, Karen. So I don't know.
True.
He's wicked smart. I know that. He figures that shit out quickly. Just needs Christopher Lee to tie it all together for him. I thought it was good. Lots of Froggy's Fog in there to set the tone. Anything you didn't like?
Well, there's a few things that were confusing to me. I didn't quite get the statue part of it, why he was so attached to the statues, why they were a different color in the warehouse than they were when he was creating them. I get that he was using the girls and killing the girls, but what was the attachment to the statues?
Well, he wasn't killing all of them.
No, but it was, and the crazy girl at the end was a little, and where the experimental surgery was done was not where it should have been. But I will say the twist at the end was excellent. I was not expecting that.
I was not either.
I thought they were just going to, you could tell when they were in the warehouse, there was straw everywhere. So when there's straw everywhere in a horror film, especially the older ones, 100% what's going to happen.
I didn't, Karen.
So I thought, well, when I saw
I don't
the
think
straw,
of that shit. I'm just going along for the ride. I'm not thinking about what's coming.
They just burned him in there, or something. I don't know. I didn't expect the twist, and Christopher Lee pulled it off perfectly. I thought the way he was calm about it and just nonchalantly said it. And,
well, George, well, he's a doctor too, so he should know where his thyroid is. So that was
I don't think that was the twist, though.
Oh, okay. It could have been.
Yes, I would have been suspicious if I woke up and they said they operated on my thyroid and the incision was under my ribs. Especially back then. Now, maybe they take something and they go up, like they don't want to get near your carotid or something and they can push.
Yes.
But back then, that's not how they did it. So
anything else?
No, there wasn't a lot I didn't like about it. There were some, like I said, just a couple extraneous things that I couldn't follow why that was so important. Like what was in the liquid he's drinking? Where did it come from? How did he make it? It
occurred to me once, but I didn't really care.
I mean, it's not.
I'm buying in. I buy in. I'm go with the flow.
That part, those kind of things, my mind wanders a little bit because why is it bubbling? Why does it have to be green? Where did you get it? It had dry ice in it. It was bubbling if you looked at it. Why did he have to measure out a certain amount? Why didn't he just swig it at some point when he was desperate?
Because he's got to.
I know, but he's desperate.
Keep it. He's got to make it last as long as he can.
But other than that, I thought it was good.
Okay. Nothing really stands out to me. I didn't really like. I could have used a little more horror. I could have. We did see him strangle a couple people, but.
Well, and they did say when he drinks the liquid, he goes a little mad, but we didn't really see that.
Well, he says that. He tells us that.
Right. But we didn't really see that. And then there were some things like when he is older before he drinks it, he has some sort of power that melts people's skin when he strangles them, but there's no real explanation. Yeah, there's no real explanation for that. So there are little details like that are missing that maybe were there and they cut them, or maybe they just wanted to add that little bit of gore. I thought it was a cool thing. The way.
And what do you do with the body, Karen? What do you do with the bodies? Bodies never turn up. They just go missing.
Well, we see him dump one in the river in the beginning.
In the very beginning. Well, do we?
Sort of. But other than that, it's too
very
dark to see. Yeah. But he didn't kill the other girl. She was there. So the only people that
he killed two girls.
That was before, though. That was 10 and 20 years ago.
No. I'm talking about, we saw him kill two girls.
Oh, he did kill. Yeah.
Two of them. He killed his model, and then he went to the pub and picked up a working woman and killed her too.
He didn't kill the model. She was the crazy one in the straw.
Oh, what? That makes sense. Now that you say it.
Yes. Because she was in there with her statue.
She had the marks on her face and arm.
Yeah, the working girl.
Yeah,
and he only did that was to get the extra thyroid so that he could put it in his girlfriend.
Gotcha.
So he had two. We never really see him kill anyone.
Yeah, I thought she. Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense.
You can see the light bulb above his head, people.
Yeah, it all makes sense now. The movie's even better now that I know who the hell that girl was in the cage. Because I didn't put it together.
It was a neat effect.
She was dressed very nicely with her hair up and all that shit when we see her. And he goes to strangle her. Well, he puts his hand over her mouth.
Because she screamed.
Yeah, and she falls very quickly. And I'm like, well, damn, she suffocated quickly. That's what I thought. But she's not dead. He puts her in a cage.
But that's one of the neatest effects, where the outline of his hand is on her mouth and where he put his hands around
her arm.
Her. Yeah, like wherever he touched her. I thought that was a cool effect.
Well,
I would have liked to seen more of that.
Is that it, Karen?
Yeah, I think after the last couple of movies we've seen, it's nice to see an actual story with a plot and good acting.
I agree.
I'd never heard of it.
I don't know why you keep picking those terrible films.
For fun. I actually kind of like them.
All right, Karen. This film, I will tell you, has a 33% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is low. Got a 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb. And what do you think of those Google users, Karen? What do you think?
88.
83.
Oh,
I'm liking it right now, so I'll be one of those Google users, hopefully raising the percentage. I do have a review of the time, Karen.
excellent. What does the Critics Corner give us?
From Variety, June 24th, 1959. Well, that must have been a preview copy or some shit, but whatever. And I will paraphrase as usual. It is apparent from the Hammer production, The Man Who Could Cheat Death, that horror films are nearing the end of their current cycle. The Paramount release is in good Technicolor. It is well acted and intelligently conceived. But invention and embellishment in this field appear to have been exhausted. If it is to succeed, The Man Who Could Cheat Death will have to be heavily exploited. Horror films are victims of their own past success. Lavish with monsters and laced with gore, what first popped the eyeballs later only droops the lids. As ever greater horror is required, there is less and less that is horrible enough. The Man Who Could Cheat Death is, in a sense, hoist by its own bloody scalpel. Aside from a few macabre scenes, there is nothing that will more than ripple the surface sensibilities of even the most impressionable. Hammer is the only production unit concentrating on class horror films. Like its past successes, The Man Who Could Cheat Death has nothing foolish about it. Jimmy Sangster's intelligent screenplay is directed seriously and straight by Terence Fisher. The cast responds with alacrity. The trouble is, as a straight story, it does not have enough about it to keep it consistently or intermittently interesting, and there's not enough horror to compensate.
I agree. There isn't a lot of there isn't a lot
I
of
mostly
horror in
agree.
it, Otherwise, it's very well acted.
Yeah, it's well done. It's a well-made picture.
It is an intelligent picture. It's a thinker. If morality doesn't really mean anything to you, you probably don't find it all that horrific. If it does,
Oh my God. Are you telling me I have morality, Karen?
that's just crazy talk.
I know. Crazy. All right. What kind of cocktail rating you want to give this film?
Well, I kind of agree with
I'm writing a number. Hang on. Let me write my number. Okay.
I agree with that review. So as a horror film, I would give it a 3.
That's exactly right. I wrote, okay, Karen. 3 cocktails.
Because there isn't a lot of horror. But it might, you were just judging the acting, it could be a 2-ish, but it's a horror film. And
it's
so
dark. It's got its dark pieces and
it's gothic and, but it's not, even back then, I don't, like they said,
what
I
would
don't
have been
think
cool?
it would have. What's that?
If they would have had like some flashbacks.
Oh, to the previous murders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, that would have been cool.
But that would have made him unlikable. And I'm not sure if we're supposed to root for him or not.
I don't think we are.
It's kind of like Frankenstein. There are moments where he gives a whole speech about how difficult it is to be alone. He's by himself. There's no one like him. He
does that because he's afraid of death. He doesn't want to die.
Well,
he doesn't want to help mankind or whatever. I mean, he gives that whole speech about, well, if we publish this, there would be famine and whatever because no one would die. And,
Well, only the people giving their thyroids would die. But
right.
So half the people would die and then nobody else would die. But no, I mean, there are moments where he talks about how lonely he is and things. I mean, did I really like him?
That's by his own design.
Yes, but I'm saying I think it's put in there so that you try to kind of like him. I didn't, like you're saying, but I think it's put in there for that reason.
I'm not saying I didn't like him, but I agree. 3 cocktails. That was pretty good. Are we ready to get into it?
Sure, let's go.
All right. The Man Who Could Cheat Death from 1959. It's rated 18 plus, Karen.
Yeah, I thought that was
I'm
a
not
weird.
sure why.
I have no idea why.
We had no warnings.
There's a lot of smoking.
A lot of smoking, a lot of drinking.
But 18 plus seems a little high. I couldn't find anything in there that was 18 plus.
Killing whores and taking their thyroid, but
you don't even see it.
But just the fact that there's hose in it probably makes it 18 plus.
We've seen worse that hasn't had an 18 plus.
All right. Paris 1890, Karen, apparently is where we are. And I wrote, there's lots of Froggy's fog.
Yep.
And I wrote, it appears a man is attacking another man and he's pulling out medical instruments.
Yeah, I can't really see what's going on. It's too dark.
And then we have credits intermingled with all of this stuff, right? And I wrote, very dark, can't see what's going on. I wrote, discards the body in water, question mark.
So who do you think that was? Do you think that was George or do you think that was Ludwig?
I think it was George.
Okay. Maybe that's where he gets his liquid from or something. I don't know.
But the man who attacked leaves, the other man leaves carrying a briefcase with, I assume, stuff in it. I don't know. More credits. And then we see a sign that says Rue Nore or something like that. Apparently we're in France, Paris, right?
Paris. They're in a clinic in central Paris.
Rue Nore. You know what that means?
Street, whatever Nore is it?
Does it?
Yeah, the Rue is a street, right?
Oh, I don't know, Karen. But apparently it's a section in France too. Yeah, Rue Nore. So it's an area in France.
But it means street, right?
Oh, it is a street in France, actually. But whatever. So that's what it is. And then another sign that says Clinique de Paris Central, Dr. George Bonnet. Apparently there's a party going on, Karen. There's a party going on right here.
Yeah, there's drinks. They're talking about how charming the doctor is and what wonderful taste he has. And I said, looks like he's an artist. Lots of smoking.
Yeah, apparently he's doing this to like show off his latest sculpture. But Christopher Lee enters and takes up the room. He absorbs the room.
With Janine. I thought Janine took up the room, but whatever.
Did you? I just wrote a redhead. Christopher Lee enters with a redhead. But Dr. Bonet seems very interested in the redhead, I wrote.
Immediately. I thought, oh, they fell in love. The way they looked at each other, but that's not what it was.
No. And soon I start calling Christopher Lee Dr. Gerard.
Oh, I call him Pierre.
So Bonet excuses himself from the people he's talking to. And I guess his servant or butler or whatever comes to him and says he waited at the train, but no one was there. Bonet asks when the next train is. His assistant says 6 hours. Assistant. That's a good name for him. Assistant. Bonet tells him to be sure he is there. So then Bonet reveals his statue of the young Margot. A man tries to buy the sculpture, but Bonet refuses. He says he wants to keep it and look at it in private.
It was weird.
And he mentions his young model, and Janine, the redhead, seems upset at that.
Yes, she doesn't like that. She looks uncomfortable.
So the man who offered to buy the sculpture tells Janine this because they start talking while they're mingling around the party. And then they find another sculpture behind a curtain, and they the guy lifts the
gauze
burlap
off
of it. Yeah. And it's the one of Janine.
You can tell it's her too.
And he can too. So he says, oh, excuse me. I didn't mean to see your sculpted breasts.
Yes, it's her torso. So the one he unveiled for everyone was just like shoulders and above, wasn't it? Or did it have?
I don't remember.
But Janine's is like her whole torso.
Whole torso, yeah.
I guess the other one probably had boobs in it. I don't know.
Naked. And then Janine says she wants to leave. And she and Christopher Lee or Pierre or Dr. Gerard leave. And
He did.
Benet's,
She seems smug, though, that she saw that he did sculpt her. Because didn't he earlier say he didn't sculpt her? He
Yes.
left all the drawings in Rome or
yes, he didn't do it.
something. And then when
Yeah.
she sees it, she feels a bit. You see her act very
Yeah, she
smug.
seems very pleased that
Yes.
it is her when she sees it. So then Benet's servant or assistant says it's 6:15 and no one was at the train. So then Benet ends the party as Janine and Christopher Lee leave.
Well, because the assistant comes in and says it's 6:30.
Yeah, he keeps asking what time it is.
And George says, "Oh my God, my watch is slow. Everybody has to leave immediately, right now. I'm sorry I'm being rude. Get out of my house," basically.
Then Benet asks his assistant the time, or the butler or whatever. This is different, but this is his butler this time. And he tells him that if his assistant comes with news from the train, he can wake him at any time as he's going to bed, I guess.
It's almost 7:00. Yes, and they're all going to bed at 7:00.
Well, he's going to his laboratory to a
Yeah,
safe, but
they say go to bed, and he acts like he's going to bed.
Yeah.
7:00.
then we see George in his laboratory going to a safe, and Margot interrupts him. The young Margot, the young model.
Yes, who kept telling him, "Well, now that you're done sculpting me, are we ever going to see each other again? I love you. I love you. You made me tell you I love you all the time." So she doesn't want their relationship to end, but he's finished with her statue. So she's kind of getting the picture that it's done.
I said good day. So she accuses him of being in love with Janine. George tells her she must leave, tells her to get out. And then she asks what is wrong with his eyes. So his eyes, and they're turning from like a beautiful blue, Karen, to green or something. Yellow.
Or they got really big, and then he got the bags that I have under my eyes, under his eyes.
Not quite, Karen. She agrees to leave, but seems worried about George. George turns and tells her it's too late. And I wrote, he suffocates her, ? Because he puts his hands over her mouth, and she
Well,
just
he knocks
drops.
over a lamp so she can't see him.
She just drops. Whatever. Then George goes to the safe and drinks a potion, and then his wrinkles disappear. Karen, just like this fountain of youth cocktail.
I'm waiting. Tell me when all my wrinkles disappear.
And then he feels bad. I wrote for killing her, but apparently she ain't gone. But I don't realize that until just recently. So apparently it's the next day, Karen.
He's working on Janine's statue.
Janine arrives. She wants to know why he is afraid of loving her. George tells her that they cannot be together and kisses her. Janine asks to see the statue.
She likes it.
They talk about how it is very lovely.
Well, he says it's you who are lovely. He only copied what was already lovely, and then they stare at each other lovingly.
And Janine asks to pose for him again. Now. Right now. Then two men arrive at the doors. Janine is posing topless for George, although we don't see anything. No breasts in this film, other than the stone ones.
Statues, yeah.
Butler knocks at the door and tells him that Professor Ludwig has arrived. He agrees to meet
it's
him
Professor
immediately.
Weiss, Ludwig Weiss.
Ludwig Weiss, yeah, Ludwig. Yeah. And George learns that Professor Ludwig, that's what you're going to call him, has had a stroke.
Okay, yes, so stop. So we're going to do a public service announcement about strokes.
PSA.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you know what the signs of a stroke are? Or what not the anagram, what do they call it when you take the first letter of each thing? Is it an anagram? No, it's something else. Anyway, so if you notice any signs or symptoms of a stroke, even if they seem to come
Slurred
and go,
speech.
or they disappear completely, think fast, FAST, and do the following. Face. Ask the person to smile. Does one side of the face droop? Arms. Ask the person to raise both arms. Does one arm drift downward, or is one arm unable to rise? Speech. Ask the person to repeat a simple phrase. Is his or her speech slurred or strange? Time. If you observe any of these signs, call 911 or emergency medical help immediately. So signs and symptoms of the stroke are trouble speaking and understanding what others are saying, paralysis or numbness of the face, arm, or leg, problems seeing in one or both eyes, headache, and trouble walking. But fast, face, arm, speech time. Because the important thing is with strokes, the faster you get medical attention, the better off you are. So if someone knows to do these things and calls 911 immediately, you have a much better chance of not only surviving, but recovering at a faster rate. So there you go. Fast. Face, arms, speech time.
But how do you recognize someone is having a stroke, that quickly?
I think it's you can
you kind of have to know.
You can see it like in their, like,
I would think that slurred speech or the facial thing would be first, right? It's notice.
Yeah, that's what you notice. And then you go through these things.
My grandmother had a stroke.
And you could tell?
Afterwards.
When it was happening?
No, I wasn't there when it was happening, but afterwards I could tell because her face was never the same. She never spoke the same. It's like half of her face was frozen kind of most of the time, right? She could blink and talk, but there was a noticeable difference between sides.
Well, yeah. So my husband had Bell's palsy, which is where half your face droops. And I did this because I thought he was having a stroke. It was obvious in the face that something was wrong. So you do, I think, notice it, but probably speech is the first thing that you would notice. Incoherent speech or unable to speak or trying to speak and not being able to. And then while someone's dialing 911, you can do these other things. But time is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think my dad made her go to the doctor. My grandmother. I think we were just visiting and he kind of noticed it and like, you need to go to a doctor. Didn't call 911 or anything, but still.
Well, there are varying degrees of strokes too. There are different kinds and different levels, and could be TIAs, which are small, all the way up to, big ones. So always err on the side of caution. You've just listened to half of this week's episode. Are you loving it? If so, can you do us a big favor and leave a review wherever you listen? Reviews help us grow the podcast. We just want to say thanks so much for your support. Now let's get back to the good stuff.
Then we learn that apparently George needs an operation and Professor Ludwig is no longer able to perform it after his stroke. His right hand is of no use to him for the most part. He can no longer operate.
Right. And then George's like, well, maybe with your left hand. Come on, dude, suck it up. But no.
George explains that he has been drinking the fluid every 6 hours to keep himself alive. Professor Ludwig tells him he must find someone else to do the operation, a young surgeon.
Yes, so someone who will last a long time, because Ludwig is like, that stroke could have killed me. You got to find someone else. I'm out. I can't do it anymore.
And I'm kind of surprised that Ludwig doesn't know by now that George is all in this for himself. Whatever.
Well, he has hope. As you do with your friends, Greg. You keep hoping, but then friends? You just have to...
So then Professor Ludwig says they just need to find a young surgeon.
Wait, is that a slight on me or you?
Oh, are you my friend?
Well, no, I'm saying, do you think I don't have any friends or do you think you don't have any friends? Anyway,
I think I don't have any friends. So then the assistant knocks on the door and says that Janine is leaving. Apparently she's gotten tired of sitting up there topless.
Yes, she got cold. She needed to.
So then George introduces her to the professor. Janine says she will see him later for dinner. George asks her to bring Dr. Gerard with her. She thought, I thought it would just be us two. But no, he wants Dr. Pierre Gerard to be there as well.
And they googly eye at each other and kiss.
Then Ludwig asks if they should publish their findings, and George convinces him to let him decide when to publish.
Which is a very big deal for scientists. That's your ultimate goal. That's how everyone judges you, is by what and how often you publish. Surgeons too, probably back then, but less now.
Ludwig asks George if he remembers their first toast. He says, yes. And he says, well, say it. And he says, they did it for humanity. And Ludwig says, you have changed. George asks Ludwig if he has the picture of them from the beginning when they first started. And this is where we learn that George is 104 years old.
Yes, he's 15 years older than Ludwig. And Ludwig's an old man.
Yes.
I mean, he's 89, I think he says. He looks pretty good for 89, but he is an old man.
Later that evening, Dr. Gerard and Janine and Dr. Ludwig at George's house. Dr. Gerard and Professor Ludwig discuss medicine and surgeries and whatnot. George escorts Dr. Gerard and Professor Ludwig from the room, and he and Janine share some private time.
I couldn't tell if he wanted private time with her or he didn't want her to hear their conversation about the operation.
Probably
because
both.
George is very sick, and if he doesn't get the operation, he's going to die.
I say both. George tells Janine that he's going away. Janine asks if he must go alone. Must you go alone?
I thought that was kind of poignant when she said that. They made that a moment. Because he stops, turns around, and looks at her. I thought, nicely done.
Professor Ludwig and Dr. Gerard discuss the operation. Dr. Gerard seems hesitant, and Dr. Gerard is Christopher Lee.
I thought this was all hypothetical, he says, and now all of a sudden you're asking me to do it. And he says no.
Professor Ludwig tells Dr. Gerard that he has come to perform an operation to save the life of George, but he is unable to do it since his stroke. Dr. Gerard is hesitant to perform it based on moral reasons, Karen. Professor Ludwig says unless the operation is performed, George will die. He says he has performed it many times.
Easy peasy.
Dr. Gerard agrees to perform the operation under the direction of Professor Ludwig, right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this is where he says it, but at one point, Ludwig says it's a very simple operation, and Christopher Lee says there are no simple operations, which is true.
True. The only minor surgery is one that's not happening to you.
Yes.
So then we see George and Janine kissy-facing. George tells Janine that she should let Dr. Gerard take her home.
They proclaim their love, and he's like, I tried not to love you, but I couldn't. And they're getting ready to leave, and ding dong.
Inspector arrives. Inspector Legree.
Oh, I only call him the
guess.
inspector.
I know, but he's credited as Legree. Inspector arrives to talk to George. George invites them all into the study. Come on in. This inspector can't ask me anything that none of you can hear, apparently.
Well, that shows how innocent you are, right?
I guess.
But I wouldn't. I would say, okay, good night, you guys. I'll go talk to the inspector.
Right, me too. Inspector begins. We all have skeletons, don't we, Karen?
Yes. Who knows what the inspector could be coming in for? There's
right.
such a multiple of things.
That's true.
Like, which one am I busted on? Well, let's go and find out.
So the inspector begins questioning George about the disappearance of Margot, the young model. Inspector asks to see the statue of Margot because he has no idea what she looks like. George says it no longer exists. But Dr. Gerard knows better because he just saw it in the laboratory recently.
Right, when they were in the laboratory.
And he starts to say something. It stops, and George tells them that it fell and it smashed to pieces. Oh, too bad. So then the inspector leaves, and Dr. Gerard says, you know, the statue is quite in your laboratory. And Dr. Gerard explains that, yeah, I know, but he did not want to part with it. He did not want to give it to the police to have it in their, evidence locker forever.
Yeah, they'd take it. And he's very attached to all these statues.
Dr. Gerard seems to accept that explanation, and they leave. Then Professor Ludwig tells George that Dr. Gerard agreed to do the surgery. But Professor Ludwig is concerned about all the models that disappeared after modeling for George.
Every 10 years.
It's only taken him like 40 years to
to put it together.
Figure out that every 10 years, some model dies that George is sculpting or disappears. But we learn the operation is to occur the next morning. Before leaving, Professor Ludwig goes to the laboratory to look at the statue, and he finds the jar with the parathyroid gland in it, and he examines it very carefully, Karen, under several magnifying glasses.
Yes. And I thought it was from Margot, so I don't know where it came from.
I know, me too. I guess it's from the person we saw killed in the beginning.
Possibly.
So then George enters to take another dose of the fluid. Professor Ludwig tells George that the gland was taken from a living body. And George blames the professor because it was all his fault. He was 3 weeks late.
Stroke or no stroke, get here on time.
He says he has gone through 4 of the glands. Each one died and trying to keep one alive. So he's harvested several in the last week, apparently, Karen.
But from cadavers, I think, because that's why Ludwig is so upset. He can tell from that gland that it was from a living person for some, however he's
okay. So you're saying the previous 3 were from cadavers, but this one was a living person because George was desperate.
Yes.
So then George confronts Dr. Ludwig. George asked Professor Ludwig if he had preferred he died, and Professor Ludwig says yes.
At this point, because he says, goes on his
what is death that it should be feared so much?
But why is your life more important than the person that you killed and took this thyroid
or
from?
Mine or anyone else's? But
George is thinking his life is superior to other people's lives, and he says, yes, I'm more important.
Why?
Because he's George. In his mind, he's more important. So,
well, as you would.
But that's their moral discussion they're having.
And Professor Ludwig accuses George of playing God.
Because he's making the decision on who lives and dies.
And here's where George has a little pity party and laments having to sever ties with everyone every so often and start all over again. He's so lonely. Boo-hoo-hoo.
He's alone.
Dr. Ludwig tells George that it's not natural to live alone. George says he doesn't want to live alone. He can perform the operation on a person he loves. Maybe Janine. Professor Ludwig says, good day. I can no longer help you. I'm out. George goes to open the safe, but Ludwig takes the key.
And often during this movie, you can tell when he's about to change because he looks at his hands. That's kind of the signal. Something's happening. George is looking at his hands.
And George begs for Ludwig to give him the key as he grows old. Ludwig refuses. But George is still a lot younger than Ludwig, muscular-wise, and he takes the key from him and shoves him aside. Then he opens the safe and he carefully pours the glass, and Ludwig knocks it out of his hand. Then he knocks all of the fluid out of the safe, destroying it.
Like he just needs a straw. It's on the ground, like he can suck it up.
He could. Then George attacks Professor Ludwig and strangles him and kills him.
Because he drank the liquid, I think. He's mad now, which isn't really clear.
He isn't drinking it, though.
Oh, he hasn't. That's right.
Yeah, right now he salvages fluid from broken pieces of glass and pours it into another glass.
It's his last moment. Yeah. Who cares about those little pieces of glass he just drank? He's fine because he stays healthy.
You never see what happens to the body of Professor Ludwig, though. But
no.
Whatever. Next morning, Dr. Gerard arrives to perform the surgery. He asks where Professor Ludwig is, and George gives some excuse he had to leave or whatever.
Yes, emergency at home.
Dr. Gerard says without Professor Ludwig, he cannot perform the operation. He refuses to do the surgery. George offers to pay him, but he refuses. He leaves. Next, we cut to the inspector arriving at Dr. Gerard's house. And Dr. Gerard tells the inspector that the statue is intact of Margot and in George's laboratory.
Because when the inspector showed up the first time, Pierre almost said, no, the statue, he almost blurted it out, but then he stopped. So the inspector said, it looked like you were going to tell me something. And then he spills the beans.
So then the inspector asks Gerard how old he thinks George is. And they both say he looks about 35. But then the inspector begins telling Dr. Gerard about the 3 women who disappeared every 10 years, 10 years ago. And
which is
10 years before that,
incredible.
and 10 years before that.
Yeah, that they would have had enough information to keep track of that.
Like
10
was
years
in San
is a long time.
Francisco, one was in
London,
all over the place. Yeah.
Switzerland.
And in each case, the girl in question had been posing for a statue. And the sculptor was a doctor who disappeared shortly after.
Yeah, so don't have hobbies because they'll track you.
Apparently, Karen. They both agree that if it was George every time, he would be over 60 now.
But they agree that he doesn't look that old. And the statues were never found.
Yeah, Dr. Gerard asks about the other statues, and the inspector says they were never seen again. Inspector says that he has traced George's actions back to 10 years ago, and then they end. He didn't exist prior to 10 years ago.
Can't find anything else.
He's like a Highlander, Karen. He's like the MacLeod. So Dr. Gerard asked the inspector to see if Professor Ludwig was in the same cities the girls who disappeared were in previously.
Yeah, so are they thinking it's Ludwig, or are they like, I don't know, that kind of went nowhere.
No, I think I see where he's going. Like he has to have, he knows George needs this surgery.
Oh, I see.
Every 10 years. So George
he does. That's
George has been taking, apparently George has been taking living parathyroids for decades. And Professor Ludwig has just now noticed, I guess. Then we see George going to see a surgeon who denies to do the surgery. See Dr. Gerard trying to convince Janine that George is abnormal. Of course, she accuses him of being jealous.
Yes.
And he is. And she admits that she loves him and she is going to marry him. Then we see George meeting with another surgeon to perform the surgery. He agrees. He tells him it must be that evening, but the surgeon does not have a steady hand, Karen, and his instruments are not clean.
He's more of a second-class doctor. So you get the impression that George has gone around to all the surgeons who have good reputations and gave up and started going to the second-class ones. But everything's fine. He's got dirty instruments, and George says, that's fine. I have clean instruments at my house. And then the doctor takes a big old shot of whiskey because he has to have that before every surgery. And I think that's when George was like, no, I have a different plan now.
Then George goes to see Janine. Janine tells him about what Dr. Gerard has been telling her. And George asks Janine to come with him. He takes her to an area where all of his statues are stored. It's his storage unit, Karen.
Yes, I called it a warehouse. She's all decked out in white. She's got a white dress, white gloves, white cape. She's ready to get married, it looked like.
But no, they go down to this dungeon and dungeness of a place looking.
It's a warehouse, but.
And he shows Janine all the statues, including hers. He shows Janine the very first statue he ever made, and it's of a dog, Karen. Did you make a note of what kind of dog that was?
No, I couldn't tell.
But it is dated, he wrote on it, 1798.
Yes, when he was 12. And she does the math.
Yeah. If you did this when you're 12, you've been 104 years old. You have the date wrong. And then he locks her in. Then we see George seeing Dr. Pierre. He's trying to convince him to do the operation. George tells him of the story of how he and Professor Ludwig met and discovered the secret of immortal life. And George volunteered to be the first guinea pig. They discovered the secret of perpetual life and health, even though he smokes like a chimney, I wrote.
Right. So
he's never been sick.
He's lucky.
And they never published their information because the whole structure of civilization would collapse.
Civilization, yes. Would all be affected. The balance of everything would be out of whack.
Yeah, there'd be famine and housing issues and whatever. And as well, every 10 years, the gland must be replaced. And with no one dying, there would be no glands available.
See, so they were taking it from cadavers.
But why were all the women dying, Karen, every 10 years? I don't think he was.
Right. I think that's what Ludwig thought he was doing.
So then George tells him if no gland is available, He must drink the fluid, which will keep him alive for 4 weeks, but it has side effects on mental health, Karen.
Yep.
He tells him he has enough fluid left to last 6 hours. Dr. Gerard refuses to perform the operation. It is an offense to God, Karen. George checks his watch, then asks Dr. Gerard if he is in love with Janine. He tells him that Janine is locked away in a place only he knows. If Dr. Gerard refuses to do the operation, she will never be seen again.
Clever.
He gives Dr. Gerard 2 hours to decide. Cut to a pub. George arrives.
And the lady of the evening ditches her date very quickly to go over to George.
You mean the working girl, Karen?
Yes.
They leave. She's a pretty good looking working girl.
Yeah, she was pretty. So I said everybody's pretty, but they go through some Froggy's fog.
And they enter her apartment.
That's what it seemed like.
And then we just hear a scream as the door shuts. In the laboratory, George places a gland in a glass jar. And there's a ring at the door. Dr. Gerard enters from the fog, just like The Exorcist I wrote.
I did not notice that.
Oh, he does. He walks right out of the fog and into the foyer or whatever. It's a pretty good scene, I think. George tells him that everything is ready. George gives Dr. Gerard his word that he will release Janine immediately once he performs the operation. Before Dr. Gerard puts George under, George says, it would be extremely unfortunate if I did not survive the operation. Then we cut back to Janine in the sculpture room, I called it, and she begins hearing laughter.
Wait, before we do that, so right when he says it would be very unfortunate if I didn't survive, we see Pierre about to give him chloroform. You see the bottle and the hanky. So chloroform, I'm assuming that's what it is.
I'm assuming as well.
Could be ether, whatever. But chloroform was discovered in 1832 and was in common use by the Civil War because of how quickly it goes into effect.
Well, but Civil War is 1860s and this is 1890s, so it's probably chloroform.
Yeah. So it takes at least 5 minutes of inhaling an item soaked in chloroform to render a person unconscious. Again, this is going to ding up my computer of what are you looking for? Because, in the movies, they just put that over your face and you're out.
You drop, yeah.
But it says most criminal cases involving chloroform also involve another drug being co-administered, such as alcohol or diazepam. But usually that's on your face and you just drop. It takes a good 5 minutes. You're probably a little loopy, but you're not out cold. And they don't use it anymore because it started, if you don't administer the right amount, you can have deaths due to respiratory failure and cardiac arrhythmias. So it's not the safest thing.
How long does it knock you out for?
I didn't find that because I'm pretty sure it probably depends on your size.
But obviously they can do surgery on you while you're knocked out.
Right. If they add enough. And the half-life's pretty long, so it stays in your system for a while, but not enough to, render you unconscious. But
can you buy it in the drugstore, Karen? Chloroform?
I don't know. You must be able to get it somewhere because it's in like the crime shows and stuff,
it's
right?
In all of them.
But it wouldn't be a good thing to buy because they know immediately if you've purchased it. So you're automatically a suspect then because they track all that stuff now. Look up who bought, chloroform in Central Ohio on this such and such a date or in the last so many months. You can't do that anymore. Or I highly suggest you don't.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
So she hears laughter. She finds a girl locked up and she tries to help her, but she recoils from her.
She seems to be a little bit mad.
Nutty.
Yeah, she's not all there right now.
Then we see Dr. Gerard patching George's wounds on his abdomen.
Right under his rib cage.
Where his parathyroid gland is apparently not.
His new one. That's where his new one is.
Then George leaves.
So
while
Pierre's talking
Dr.
to
Gerard is in the other room. Yeah.
Just cleaning his instruments and saying, how you doing? And George is well enough with this transplant, just walk out right then.
Well,
All the
Dr. Gerard tells him to get up and walk around, see how he
but
feels.
the chloroform's not making him. He just leaves. He's perfectly
we don't
fine.
know how long it's been.
True.
There's no sense. Yeah, we have no time lapse. There's no like 4
But
hours later.
He's still cleaning his instruments though, so
that's true.
Unless he took a nap after the surgery to make, I don't know. He could have.
It's true. So George leaves. Dr. Gerard gives chase, but it's very foggy, Karen. Dr. Gerard sends George's assistant to fetch the inspector.
Yes.
Then George arrives at the sculpture room, his storage unit. And George tells Janine the story of how he has lived.
First he says, will you do anything for me? Do you want to be with me forever? And she says, yes, yes. Then he tells her all this horrible stuff and she still wants to be with him. She's like, yeah, I'm in. It's fine.
But not forever.
She's getting a little hesitant. And then she finds out she has to be, operated on. And then maybe not.
Then the inspector arrives at George's house and Dr. Gerard tells the inspector about the operation. George tries to convince Janine to have the operation we just talked about. Back at George's, Dr. Gerard finds a shipping receipt.
Yeah, he's rifling through his desk like there's no tomorrow.
Statue.
Yeah, he's like, they need to find something to tell them where Janine is.
And the shipping receipt has the address of where the statue was delivered. So they run there. That's where they're going. The sculpture room. And then George, I wrote, begins to turn old. And then he realizes that the Dr. Gerard did not perform the operation after all.
Where does Pierre tells the inspector that?
Does he?
Yeah, when they're in the room, he says he performed the operation. What does he say? He says it's very succinct what he says, and it's very Christopher Lee when he's doing.
But not to his. I performed the operation, but not to his.
Or no, I think he says, I made the incision, but I did not perform the operation. So we know, and then everyone else immediately knows when he starts to turn.
Yeah. So he begins to grow old rapidly. He tells Janine he is going to die. Dr. Gerard and the inspector arrive, and the laughing imprisoned girl, Margot, throws a lamp at George, ignites the place on fire.
He's changing rapidly. His skin's falling off, his hair's falling out, everything. He looks like he was green, but I couldn't tell if he was green or not. But
yeah, I think he was. He turns green when he starts changing. Even earlier in the film, that's when he takes a drink and gets better. But Dr. Gerard and Janine leave. George and the girl are engulfed in flames.
The inspector tries to go in to get Margot, but
not real hard. But
the fire's pretty. I mean, there was straw everywhere.
He makes his way down the stairs one step at a time as he's watching the fire, and yeah, he wasn't in a big rush.
But the girl's just laughing the whole time
until she's engulfed in flames.
Yes.
Credits. The end. All right. Number 14 out of 61 in the books, Karen.
You really do see what a good actor Christopher Lee could be when he's in these types of movies.
He's always a good actor. What are you talking about?
Well, you could tell he didn't like doing some of the Dracula films he did, I think.
He's still a good actor in it. He still has a presence.
I guess. You don't like him as much in those.
He eats up the stage, Karen.
Not for me. But these, he definitely commands attention.
This is probably his best performance we've done, even though he's not the lead. I would say. I've seen him in better things, though. So, all right, Karen, what'd you think of The Fountain of Youth? Do you feel younger? You look younger.
Do I? So do you. Maybe it's just because you have blurry vision now because it's a bunch of vodka. So maybe that's what it is. You drink a bunch and you think everybody looks younger.
Vodka lenses now or something?
Yeah. Like you think everybody looks real. You look so good. You're so pretty because you just drank a bunch of vodka. So everybody, including yourself, looks better until the next morning. It's like the liquid he needs to drink every 6 hours. That's what this is.
It's very possible.
You keep your vodka glasses on, your vodka lenses. Everybody's so pretty.
It's a little too much cucumber for me. I would have cut the
I-
cucumber in half.
I like it. I like the flavor. I like that I can taste the cucumber over the vodka a little bit. That helps me.
Anything we learned today?
No, we learned about where your thyroid gland is, where your parathyroid gland is, about chloroform, about what to do if you think someone's having a stroke, a little bit about strokes. Might be it, is it?
Dorian Gray.
Dorian Gray. Yes.
Yeah, not bad.
You didn't get an Iron Maiden reference in there.
No, didn't try. But we had a PSA about strokes. That's important.
It's true.
Karen.
Yes.
If you take nothing else from this episode, remember FAST,
Yes.
which stands for what, Karen?
Face, arms, speech, and time.
FAST. You could save someone's life, boys and girls.
All because of the Scary Spirits podcast.
All right. Next film. Is it your choice? Probably is, because this was mine.
It was my choice. Or it is my choice, I should say.
We're into December, Karen. Have you picked a Christmas film for us?
I have.
And what would that be?
I have picked the 2010 movie Saint.
It's a foreign film, right?
I don't know, is it?
Yes, it is.
Oh, is there going to be subtitles?
Yes, I think it's overdubbed in English.
Oh, God, is it on Amazon?
Yeah, its original title is Sint.
Okay, I saw that, yeah.
But it is overdubbed in English. So
Well, that'll be interesting.
I think it's a horror comedy.
I don't know a lot about it. All I know is it comes out on the Feast of St. Nicholas
There you go.
on December 6th.
So is that the day after Krampusnacht?
Yes, it is. Although we learned in our
You could have picked a Krampus film.
we learned in our wicked ramblings that they're partners.
Well, yeah.
I could have, but we did a Krampus one last year, so we're doing a Saint Nick.
All right.
They have a bromance.
Okay.
They're together.
Do you have a cocktail for us?
I do.
Awesome.
It's
Is it
called
a Krampus cocktail?
No, it's called the Nutty Saint Nick. You're gonna need bourbon, hazelnut liqueur, eggnog, milk, cinnamon, and nutmeg. Basically, you're gonna put it all in a shaker, shake it up, and pour it into a glass. It does not say ice, but I guess the eggnog is usually cold.
Sounds good.
It makes two. So when we post the recipe, you can just half it or you can just make two and drink up.
I think that's what I'll do, Karen. What do we need? Bourbon, hazelnut liqueur, eggnog.
Yeah. Milk, cinnamon, and nutmeg. It says walnut bitters are optional. I don't have those and I'm not going to buy them. And you can garnish.
You just use regular bitters?
I don't know. I just won't put them. I'm not a bitter fan anyway. You do garnish with a star anise pod. Or anise, sorry, star anise pod.
Yeah, I ain't doing that.
But
can I use almond milk?
I guess. Yeah,
Okay.
probably. You
That's all we got. Okay. Sounds delicious.
you liked eggnog, so
I surprisingly did. Yeah, do you buy the alcohol? Isn't there like alcoholic eggnog and non-alcoholic eggnog?
you can buy the alcoholic one. But I would prefer to buy my own. And
Your own eggs?
no, like isn't it
Your own
Southern
nogs?
Southern Comfort? It usually is, but you can
Yeah,
put
it's
brandy or you can make your own
Yeah.
better. And since you can buy it, it's not the high percentage alcohol and stuff because it's out.
You can get it at your grocery store.
Right.
Okay. I look forward to that. Anyone you need to thank this week, Karen?
I would like to thank our listener. There's a lot of podcasts out there. Thank you for spending time with us. What about you, Greg? Who do you need to thank?
I'm going to thank the band Verse 13 once again, Karen, for providing all the music in the Scary Spirits podcast.
The music definitely makes the podcast better.
Anything else?
Please drink responsibly.
Yes.
Thanks so much for listening. Want to keep in touch? Check out our website, scaryspirits.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Scary Spirits Podcast. Find us on YouTube at Scary Spirits Podcast. If you have questions or comments, you can email us at info@scaryspirits.com. To help us grow the podcast, you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You know, we really do appreciate your support. And as always, please drink responsibly.